Are you looking for a book to help you add more creativity into your life? Then this month's book therapy pick is for you. My name is Diana Garcia. I'm a licensed therapist and owner of a private practice called Nurturing Minds Counseling. My monthly book therapy series is where I pick one mental health, self-help book to review, recommend, and at least pick out 3 key insights in case you don't ever get to pick up the book. So let's jump into this month's pick. This book therapy pick is Find Your Unicorn Space, Reclaim Your Creative Life in a Too Busy World by Eve Rodsky. She's a pretty popular author at this point. Her first book, Fair Play, pretty much blew up. I think it was a Reese Witherspoon pick. They made a documentary. I haven't read it yet. It's on my to-read list. The people that have read it tend to recommend it. But this is kind of a follow-up book, not necessarily related, but there's some themes that overlap. So her first book is really talking all about kind of how you separate domestic chores at home, and really that she found a lot of the workload was falling more on women than men in traditional heterosexual couples. And the unicorn space is more of now that you've done the work with your partner to have more of a fair balance in your life, in your household, then what can you use that extra time with? And so unicorn space is all about finding that creative space, taking some of that time that you might have now and incorporating like creativity into your life. And she really talks about your unicorn space as a non-negotiable, and we'll go through a little bit of why. Heard of this author? Have you heard of her first book, Fair Play? If not, is that something you're interested in me reviewing? Let me know in your comments below. So the book is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1, as you can see, is Time for a Reset. It's chapters 1 through 3. Pretty much, I think she's just laying the groundwork as to what a unicorn space is, why it's important, the benefits of incorporating into your life. And she weaves throughout the entire book a lot of stories from people she interviewed. So I think that's the way she goes about writing her book. She interviews a lot of people, she reads a lot, she consumes a lot of research, and then she puts it together. I enjoyed a lot of the stories because I like learning that way. Some people might not. And I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so we'll do our best for today's video. Okay, coming back though, so the first part is all about laying the groundwork for why. Part 2, which is from 4 to 6, is the rules that you have to give yourself, the rules of permission. She gives 3 different rules that you have to give yourself. I'm going to review 1. Then part 3, it's cultivating the 3 C's of creativity. That's really kind of the core of the book per se. Again, that will be part of the insights I'll review in a second. All right, so before we actually go into the 3 insights, I wanted to give you a definition of what she means by unicorn space. So it's actually the way she redefines creativity. So as you can see from this screen, the active and open pursuit of self-expression in any form, which requires value-based curiosity and purposeful sharing of this pursuit with the world. Like the mythical equine that inspired the name, it doesn't exist until you give yourself permission to reclaim, discover, and nurture the natural gifts and interests that make you you. So what I also like about this unicorn space and throughout the book, it's really all about leaning into authenticity and getting to know yourself. The last couple videos that I've done as well, or at least I did one video, this one kind of 6 tips to work on yourself. I talk a little bit about that, spending some time getting to know yourself. And I thought this book was a really good kind of tie into that, because this whole unicorn space, it's really about you reclaiming what that is for you. It might be fluid, it might change over time, but it's a really kind of endeavor in you knowing yourself better and giving yourself permission to really enjoy that time for yourself. So let's jump into insight number 1. Okay, insight number 1 is all about understanding the risks involved of not dedicating time to your unicorn space. Caveat here is she does tend to gear this book more towards women, so a lot of the stories are from women. It's still applicable to men, and she does have stories from men, but I just want to kind of put that out there. So the first one is really losing yourself, especially if you only dedicate your life to the 3 P's, right? Profession, parenting, and partnerships, which she says traditionally a lot of women do. And then outside of that, you start to notice a sense of absence because you haven't really spent time knowing yourself or spending time and energy to these other areas outside of those 3 P's. The other ones, as you can see here, relationship to satisfaction. So if you feel like you're not allowed to dedicate that time or energy because you have to focus on either being a partner, being a parent, or on your career, that over time you might feel resentful towards your partner if you feel like he or she is part of the reason. If you feel like your partner does find the time and energy to do that and you can't, that also might lead to a lot of anger or frustration or resentment. Also, just overall well-being and decreased purpose in life. So really the way she's talking about this unicorn space is tying the space to your values and meaning. And so really, if you're not dedicating the time and energy to that, you're going to notice an impact in just your overall sense of just feeling good about yourself. And think about that. Like if you regularly had a space for yourself where you are doing something that feels really purpose-driven, and it's kind of driven with connection and community, that is going to somehow have a positive impact in your life that might make you a better partner, a better parent, and just overall your ability to tolerate when life gets really hard. And then of course this last one, if you have kids, it can also be modeling for your kids, because I do think that, especially as moms, that you do sacrifice a lot to be a mom, and at times that maybe that role becomes very central, and not that it's not important, but maybe modeling to your kids that there's other facets of your life and it's okay to dedicate to other areas of your life. It's not selfish, you're not selfish, it's a normal human need. Insight number 2, it's really kind of related to this last piece I said, letting go of guilt and shame. So this is permission, one of her permissions in part 2. The reason I wanted to highlight this is because I do think that this could be a barrier for you in trying to find your unicorn space. So letting go of any guilt and shame, and that you shouldn't be dedicating time or energy to this, especially if it feels like a frivolous activity, or if you have so many more competing responsibilities, like how dare you focus on this area of your life. And so I really want to acknowledge letting go of the guilt and shame, or you feel like you're taking this time away from your family or your kids or your job or other relationships in your life. I want you to really reframe that. So just some kind of tips that I picked as I was reading this chapter, it's identify your guilt and shame stories. So notice when they show up, right? So notice when you're thinking of wanting to spend time to your unicorn space or dedicate to maybe a project or a class that would take 6 weeks, and it just happens to be around the same time that your kid takes another class, and that means that you won't be available and your partner is going to have to pitch in. Again, if your partner agrees to that, then kind of identifying that guilt and shame that could come up for you. Really acknowledging that the role that maybe others might feed into this. So it's helpful to understand who are going to be the people that are going to be supportive of your unicorn space, and the truth is who are going to be the people that aren't. And the reality is maybe not turning to those people. She has a whole chapter dedicated to how you move through it with your partner, because clearly if you are in a partnership and you do have kids, that you're going to need a level of support from them, because ultimately what you're saying is you're going to dedicate this time just for you. So clearly he or she is going to have to pick up the slack on your other areas or responsibilities, particularly parenting. Acknowledging the role that society might play in this, again, more so as a woman. If, mom guilt, I think I hear that so often, like the guilt that you're taking time away from your kids or your family and it's selfish and you shouldn't do that, right? And that how society really feeds into that. She references Burnout, the book that with the Nagoshi sisters, which you can check out here. I did a book review on that. They talk about human giver syndrome and kind of a little bit about that really like you give, and that like there's this mom guilt and society really feeds into that. So just noticing the kind of messages that society sends your way. And then she has like a tool that she gives in the book. I think she talked to a researcher that talks about linking your choices to something that matters to you, your why, your value. So I'm choosing to commit to this class because it's important for me to dedicate time just for me, right? Instead of kind of having this story of guilt and shame that I'm choosing to take time away from my family, right? So really reframing the way you're seeing that. And I think it's really crucial to tie it into your why and your values, because then it's going to make the reason why you're doing that purposeful. Okay, insight number 3 is all about moving through the 3 C's of creativity, which is basically her process of finding your unicorn space and moving through it. So I'm going to briefly explain each one. And this is pretty much what part 3 is all about. So if we start off with the first one, it's really curiosity. So this is really where you just take the approach and you start to get really curious about what you think would really light you up, what's something that you're gravitating towards. And she really reframes, creativity doesn't have to be like in the artistic realm. It can be anything that really you find that and meets those kind of criteria of the definition of unicorn space. So spending a little bit of time thinking about maybe from when you were a kid, what was it what you really enjoyed? And she has exercises throughout the book questions that you can ask yourself. She also does a values checklist, and if you've been watching, you know that I love values. And actually, as you can see on her website, which I'll link below, you can actually download a values bingo checklist, which is also in the book, but that's also something that I'll link down below. Anyways, so this is just a part of getting really curious and starting to understand. There's a part where she talks about more what is curiosity, distinguishing curiosity from passion, and she has a whole bunch of quotes about curiosity, and one that I really liked. Curiosity starts with the itch to explore. So I really like that piece of just trying to be as open as possible and not setting any limits for yourself. Second, seeing the 3 C's is all about connection. So she talks about your unicorn space can't just be like a solo activity. It's really finding a way that this activity that you're doing, it's also somehow connecting you to others, maybe helping you build a community or tap into a community. And she says that that's really what's going to boost up some of that meaning, not just maybe having it as a hobby. And I really like that she talked about that, because the truth is we are social beings. So the reality is that, yes, it's great to have something you're doing on your own, but somehow linking that to a broader sense of community. It doesn't have to be in a very traditional way. It doesn't mean you have to join a class. It just means finding some sense of community or connection. She has different types that she goes through, and he's sharing the spin-off share, the show up and support share. So there's different and more, but there's different ways that you can tap into this sense of connection when you find out what activity you really want to dedicate time and energy to. She is all about completion. So she describes completion can be marked by when you share your creative, imperfect expression with the world. So it's not just enough to have an activity that you're curious and really enjoy to do, or even focusing on connecting and building community. It's also important that you're then sharing with the world. Sharing with the world can be very unique and distinct to you, whatever your activity is. So if you're a dancer, maybe you have a performance. If you're in a band, you perform. If you create jewelry, you share that with the online community, create an Etsy store, whatever it is, right? It's all about sharing this part of yourself with the world. And I think to a certain degree, she's talking about it's allowing yourself to be seen in this very authentic and unique way. She also talks about it's not like a one and done, it's not like one cycle of completion. She gives an example, her cousin, who I think is dancing is her thing, and she has a performance. And so one stage of completion might be finishing that performance, going on stage and doing that performance, but then she'll feel a new goal, right? Where then she'll have another kind of completion cycle. And again, ongoing, and whether it's in the same unicorn space or a new one, that's really the 3 C's that she wants you to go through. So as I finish the last insight, I'm wondering with you, what would get in the way of you dedicating time and energy to your unicorn space? Let me know in the comments below what would get in the way. Would you get stopped at the curiosity stage, the connection stage, or the completion stage? So let me know in the comments below. So I really do recommend this book if you are trying to find a way to really incorporate creativity in your life. If you're feeling also really burnt out, like you've lost yourself, this is a great book to help you start to kind of have a little bit more fun, playful way of looking at how you can build in more creativity in your life. It's something that I'm trying to explore as well. I'm trying to figure out how I can incorporate the insights from this book into my life. And I'm also still doing a monthly book therapy giveaway. So look in the comments below for ways on how you can enter to win a potential copy of the book. And as always, guys, I hope you continue nurturing your mind, body, and soul, and I hope you have a good one. Thanks.